Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Fate Reforged. Ian Duke, R&D developer. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, your play-by-play commentator, and we're ready to head down for our second quarterfinal match here from Pro Tour Fate Reforged. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Fate Reforged. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with R&D developer Ian Duke, and we are ready for our second quarterfinal match here. Relative newcomer to the pro scene, I mean actual newcomer to the pro scene, Justin Cohen. You take a look at him, you know, he's housemates with Sam Black, so he carries some pretty strong company when it comes to who he hangs out with in his magic circles. He's playing Amulet Bloom up against three-time Grand Prix champion. I mean, this guy's a Grand Prix superstar right here, Seth Manfield, who is playing Burn.
Yeah, and Seth's Grand Prix wins in Limited and in Modern, I believe, right? So
yeah, he's got two Limited wins and one in Modern.
Yeah, so no surprise to see him in the top 8 of a Pro Tour featuring Limited and Modern.
Yeah, it worked out nicely for Seth. So Seth has a sweet start here. He's got a Goblin Guide. A lot of lands are going to get revealed off of that Goblin Guide as Justin Cohen is playing a fairly land-heavy deck, and the lands are very important to his strategy.
Yeah, indeed, as we'll see this play out. Turn 1 Goblin Guide, of course, the optimal start for the Burn deck, so I'm sure Seth is really happy to be on the play with a Turn 1 Goblin Guide, the best thing you can hope for here. And he is light on land, doesn't have a second land, it appears, but you know, plenty more gas in his hand, so I think a good start in general for Seth.
Now, Justin Cohen is playing Amulet Bloom, which is one of the more unique and cool combo decks that we have in Modern.
Yeah,
Can you
really
give us
the
a
talk
quick,
of the tournament.
Quick walkthrough of how the deck works?
Yeah, I mean, Luis kind of went through it a little bit in the booth, but the basic idea is Amulet of Vigor says, you know, when your lands enter the battlefield tapped, they get to untap as a triggered ability, and you play these with the Ravnica bounce lands, as we call them, which enter the battlefield tapped, return a land from the battlefield to your hand, but can tap for 2 mana. And so those, in combination with the Amulet of Vigor, can essentially tap for mana the turn they enter the battlefield. Now add in a Summer Bloom, which is a sorcery for a colorless and a green that lets you play 3 additional lands on your turn, and you can really just start repeatedly playing these bounce lands, generating a lot of mana.
Okay, and then eventually you can play a Primeval Titan, or as we just saw sitting on the top of the library, for Justin Cohen, a Hive Mind.
Yeah, and a lot of really interesting and intricate lines that this deck can go into. We'd probably lose you all if we went into all the different possibilities just yet, so we'll kind of see how the game evolves and walk you all through just exactly what this Amulet combo deck is doing.
Yeah, we'll cover the line that Justin decides to take in this game.
Yeah, or the possible lines that he might take.
Right.
Yeah,
so Justin's actually had to discard the Goblin Guide did draw him to land on that first attack, and that meant that the Summoner's Pact is now sitting in the graveyard for Justin. This is not only his first Pro Tour top 8, it's also his first Pro Tour. Coming into this event,
yeah, congratulations to him
for
making it all the way to the top 8. It's just huge. Again, he and Sam Black playing this awesome deck here, you know, of Justin's design or at least tuning, and definitely one of the talk of the tournament.
Yeah, he convinced Sam Black to play the deck, who was also playing for top 8 in the last round of Swiss. Did not quite make it. Taking a look at Seth Manfield's hand, well,
yeah,
you see
so
it.
Goblin Guide on the table, Eidolon of the Great Revel on the table. Looks like he did top deck that second land. So again, a great start for him. He's got plenty more gas in the tank. Of note, the creature-based damage that Seth Manfield's deck is capable of coming up with goes relatively unopposed in this matchup. You know, he's not facing down Kitchen Finks and Tarmogoyfs here, so he can really maximize that early creature damage, and I think he's happy to start with a creature-based strategy or creature-based draw when he's on the play. So yeah, taking a look here at Cohen's hand, he does have the Summer Bloom. What he is lacking here is Amulet of Vigor. That's the key card that he really wants to start with to give him the speed that he needs to outrace the Burn deck. But, you know, Summer Bloom still, he has lots of lands from that Goblin Guide. This will let him play 3 natural land drops. Of course, none of the crazy shenanigans with Amulet of Bloom. But he's going to get up closer to his Hive Mind. And we can see he does have Hive Mind plus Summoner's Pact in his hand, and that's a kill condition by itself. So the way this works is you play Hive Mind. It's an enchantment that gives you, basically whenever a player casts a spell, the opponent gets a copy of it. You cast a Summoner's Pact, it gives your opponent a copy of the pact, and then you pass the turn to them. They're unable to pay for it, and they lose the game.
Right. Now, interestingly, Seth Manfield is going to want to get any sorcery speed burn out of his hand immediately, because with that pact trigger on the stack, he can fire off, a pair of lightning bolts or something like that to
great
take
point.
out his opponent.
And I'm sure he's thinking about that as a possibility.
Right. There's a Vesuva copying, I think, a forest, actually. And that's it. He actually didn't have the third land drop to make there, it seems. So Justin Cohen, with 4 mana at his disposal here, he really could have used a bounce land there. He's trying to ramp up to get to that Hive Mind, but the one thing that occurs to me about the matchup is that the Amulet Bloom deck ultimately is faster than the Burn deck if given the right draw. It's also less consistent, though, than the Burn deck, which is actually very consistent. I mean, almost all the cards do either a similar or same thing in the deck.
Yeah, generally speaking, we're going to see Seth presenting a turn 4 kill in many cases. The Amulet Bloom deck capable of going off faster than that, which means either getting Primeval Titan into Radiant Fountain, gaining some life, or we'll see what his options are post-sideboard, or just going straight for a Hive Mind kill as early as turn 3-ish. But again, less consistent. So we're seeing the consistent slower kill versus the higher variance but potentially faster kill. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Seth looking to commit more creatures to the board here with Monastery, Swift Spear.
He's going to drop down below 16, which is sometimes a life total we need to pay attention to, is sometimes you'll see a double striking
Primeval Titan.
8-powered Primeval Titan.
So it looks like potentially 6 points of damage here. Oh, interesting.
Interesting. So Seth has kept back Goblin Guide.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't want Cohen to draw into more lands or draw through a land into another key spell. I think he figures he has enough damage even without attacking with the Goblin Guide. And I think that's the case.
And it is because he knows he's out of lands. He knows Cohen didn't have any more lands in hand because he played Summer Bloom and only played 2 extra lands.
Let's take a look,
he draws
Marshall.
one here.
Cohen has the 5th land off the top, Simian Spirit Guide into Hive Mind and Summoner's Pact.
Uh-oh, you see Seth Manfield sit up in his chair.
Yep.
He's going to read Hive Mind, and with Justin Cohen at 11 life, I think this is going to be it. I think Cohen's going to steal game 1 here.
So he takes 2 damage from the Summoner's Pact on Seth's upkeep.
Goes to 9. How can Seth get 9 damage
Seth's
in before
Rift
his
Bolt
upkeep?
goes on the stack. This Pact goes above it. So Pact will resolve before the Rift Bolt. So, Seth would need... I don't think there's anything he can do with the mana that he has available to him.
Yeah, not with 2 mana.
He could double Lightning Bolt potentially, but that's not enough to finish off Cohen.
Yeah, Cohen's going to finish resolving the spell. It's a Primeval Titan here, but not relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, Seth
I
can't
think
come
we
up with
just
2
saw-
green, and he can't come up with 9 damage at instant speed here. Pact trigger goes on. Scoop him up, and Justin Cohen is 1-0. This looked like a great start there, but that land, untapped land off the top there for Cohen, meant that the Simian Spirit Guide, was able to get that down. Wow, you got to feel like Seth felt safe there. We'll come back with some sideboard action after these messages.
Outfit your Magic collection with the newest Fate Reforged accessories from Ultra Pro. You can see the full array of card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios of your favorite Magic artwork at ultrapro.com. Vampires, dragons, beasts. Monsters are awesome and so are Magic fans. So we're giving Magic 2015 Duels of the Planeswalkers players the new Master of Monsters card pack as a bonus. Get these 30 new all-foil cards added to your digital collection as a bonus starting February 11th. Visit magicthegathering.com now to learn more.
Back in the feature match area here in Washington, D.C. I'm curious how these players approach sideboarding. This matchup seems so... They're not really dealing with each other. Why don't we hear it right from the players themselves? Let's get a listen to what Justin Cohen and then Seth Manfield think about their sideboard plans.
All right, I'm here with Justin Cohen, and we've got his sideboard up on the wall behind us. Justin, tell us what the plan is going into games 2 and 3 here in this matchup.
The plan is to lose as little life as possible and to gain back the life I do lose. You can count on me bringing in anything that will assist in me gaining life back. Thrag Tusk, Warm Coil Engine, that's a given. Leyline of Sanctity is super important as it blanks 3/4 of the spells in his deck. He has to have a Destructive Revelry or his deck mostly turns off, and Pyroclasms and some number of Fire Spouts, depending on whether I'm on the play or the draw, will support that by killing all of his creatures. So between those two, I've got everything covered, and the Thrag Tusk will hopefully give me a buffer on my life. Nature's Claim has a chance to come in. It can deal with an Eidolon. It can also counter a Destructive Revelry pointed at something of mine, like a Leyline or an Amulet, and I gain 4 instead of losing 2, which is a fine way to spend a card in the matchup.
All right, I'm coming up like 9-10 cards here, Justin.
That's right.
What are you taking out to make room for all this?
So you take out a good number of lands. You don't want to have a lot of lands in your deck because you're never going to want to get into a situation where you're trying to just get a bunch of lands into play. That's usually something you do when you don't have an Amulet, and something you do when you're playing on the game going longer. You don't really want the game to go longer against Burn because every extra turn they get is just less life that you have because so many of their spells are just subtracting directly from your life total. So I take out about 3 lands. The Mana Confluence is fairly obvious. The Caverns don't do anything. And then past that, it becomes the packs. Most of the packs aren't very good. At least 1, maybe 2 pact negations are coming out. For sure, the Slaughter Pact is coming out. And then it's some number of the search spells between Ancient Stirring and Serum Visions are likely. Problem with them is that those are setup cards, and you don't really have a lot of time to set up against Burn. You just kind of have to get a little bit better draw than your average draw. And you also don't want to have to run a bunch of them into an Eidolon.
Okay. Justin, good luck in the remaining games in this match. Okay, Seth, heading into game 2. What's the plan? You got 15 cards behind me. Tell me what you're going to do.
Well, I know Justin's going to be boarding out a lot of bad cards in the matchup, so I'm basically looking to board in Destructive Revelry. I'm expecting him to be boarding in Leyline, which is one of the most problematic cards against me. So I'm going to have to board in the Destructive Revelries. They also kill Amulet, which is a key combo piece. So destroying an enchantment, which would be the Leyline or the artifact, with the Amulet and dealing 2 damage can be a big deal. Unfortunately, they get stranded in your hand sometimes. The other card I'm looking at is Molten Rain. He's got bounce lands in his deck, so normally you'll target like a bounce land. It's basically like killing 2 lands almost because, and it can be a huge tempo play. We thought about bringing in Paths just because he's probably going to be boarding in a card like Worm Coil Engine, but not sure it's worth it. Hopefully, we're just going to kill him before he gets to 6 mana and gets the Titans or the Worm Coil or the Thrag Tusk going. So,
Okay, Seth, good luck in the rest of the games.
thanks.
Back to the match.
All right, so what did you make of that, Ian? We're back in the feature match area here as players are finishing up their sideboard plans.
Yeah, so it sounds like we talked about how the matchup is a little bit non-interactive in the first game. Both players just kind of cruising by each other, trying to achieve their own game plan faster than one another. Post-sideboard, we're looking to be much, much more interactive. We see Justin Cohen bringing in creatures like Thrag Tusk and Worm Coil Engine to gain some life and block with, some sweeper spells, some number of Pyroclasms and Fire Spouts, and, of course, Leyline of Sanctity, which pushes things back again toward being less interactive, shutting down Seth Manfield's cards. But then again, on Seth's side, he's bringing in Destructive Revelries to take care of those Leylines. So we're going to see...
And he's got 4.
Yeah.
He's not messing around with those.
Yeah, it was a little bit unclear to me from his interview whether he was bringing in all 4 Destructive Revelries, because, again, they can get stranded in your hand, but we're going to see probably somewhere between 2 and 4, and maybe all 4. It may just be that, Leyline is a card that just ends the game if it's in play, and he may just say, I can't take a risk that he draws more Leylines than I draw Destructive Revelries, and just brings in all 4.
Let's talk about Leyline a little bit. We've seen it do serious work here this weekend when people have had it on turn 0, as we say. Remember, you can play the Leyline for free. It's kind of a unique effect in Magic, and against a deck like what we're seeing here from Seth Manfield, I mean, what a game breaker, right? You just play it and you put the ball in his court. They can do almost nothing, just attack you with some small creatures.
Yeah, ostensibly a card that, looks like a very protective and fair card. Don't do your unfair things to me. But actually, this is a card that can kind of enable you to do unfair things undisrupted by your opponent sometimes. We saw it used by Stanislav Sivka in his Eggs deck in the finals of the Modern Pro Tour about 2 years ago, Return to Ravnica, I think it was, protecting himself from Yuya Watanabe's hand disruption, allowing him to go off. And a little bit of a different role here. It's still providing that same role of giving Cohen just time to develop his own combos, his own game plan. But really here, it's like think of it as an enormous life gain card. It's like start the game with 35 life in that it shuts down that many of Seth's spells.
Now, if Justin starts the game with a Leyline and it goes unanswered, he's just a huge favorite, right?
Huge favorite. Yeah, we saw yesterday in some of the feature matches, burn decks, I think it was actually Seth himself, doing some crazy plays just to try to work around a Leyline of Sanctity. He had 2 Monastery Spears attacking, so he was literally lightning bolting himself, saying, I'll take 5 damage from the lightning bolt and my Eidolon just to get 2 prowess triggers and do you 2 extra damage. So it's like...
For those of you that missed that, it didn't work out well for Seth.
It's like a reverse char. I'll take 5, you take 2.
Yes. And while that was the only plan that Seth had at that point, it was not ultimately one that won him a game.
Yeah. So Skullcrack, another card that's important here. This is a main deck card for Seth, but he's certainly keeping it in post-sideboard because he knows Cohen is going to be bringing in those Thragtusks and Wormcoil engines. Skullcrack, of course, not only doing 3 damage, but also preventing life gain and damage prevention for the rest of the turn.
That's right. And the thing about Skullcrack that maybe isn't as apparent is that usually if, like, let's say they stick a Wormcoil engine and they attack with it and you get to Skullcrack them, usually that's game. Like, you don't need to have that over and over again. You prevent the 1 Thragtusk trigger or the 1 hit from the Wormcoil, and you can usually close the game out.
Yeah, if you want to think about the impact of the Skullcrack in that situation you outlined, it's sort of like 1 in a red, deal 9, right? Because it deals 3 plus negates the 6 points of life gain. And one fringe thing we might see come up, I'll just mention this now. Skullcrack prevents life gain and damage prevention regardless of which player is targeted by it. So it does come up occasionally that there's a Leyline of Sanctity in play and a player Skullcracks themselves just to prevent life gain on the other side of the table. But,
true.
That's a fringe thing.
I like those little
Who
things,
knows whether it'll show up or not, but I'll mention it now for the viewers at home. So players shuffling up and looking at their opening hands. Opening hand, of course, going to be extremely important in this matchup. The game likely to be decided in the first 4 or 5 turns, I'd say.
Yeah, and the one card we want to look for, and I just saw it for Justin, is Amulet of Vigor. He has one in his opener now. I didn't get a great look at the rest, but I know that that's an absolutely key card here. He didn't have it in game 1 and ultimately was able to pull out the game.
Yeah, he still won largely, the back of that Simeon Spirit Guide sort
That's
of
right.
surprising Seth a turn ahead of schedule.
Right, but still, you got to figure that if Justin's on the draw, which he is here, getting that amulet might be able to get him right back in it as far as, timing-wise.
And you can take a look at the amulet here. Whenever a permanent enters the battlefield tapped under your control, untap it. That's largely applying to the enter the battlefield tapped lands in Seth's deck. So enabling him to generate mana much faster. And there's that Goblin Guide again.
Goblin Guide reveals Leyline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that Leyline just 1 card too deep in the library, not in the opening hand to start. But, it's definitely a card that Cohen can get to and cast in a reasonable time frame with his deck. He can produce double white.
All right, so this is an important Serum Visions for Justin Cohen because he needs to find some action here. I see that he's got the Primeval Titan. We noted that he has the Amulet. He hasn't played it yet here, and he's got a Leyline of Sanctity in his hand, which is a little bit of an awkward place to have it. But I don't see any Summer Bloom type effects.
Yeah, and more importantly, Marshall, I don't see any more lands in his hand.
No lands, no Summer Bloom. So the Serum Visions found another copy of Serum Visions off the draw, and now he's resolved the Scry. Passes the turn back. So, yes, digging for lands here for Justin Cohen. And Seth Manfield, his job is easy here. All right, and you see that Justin has deftly put a land on top of his library here. He gets to draw it with the Goblin Guide. But he does take the 2 damage.
We saw Seth decline to attack with the Goblin Guide in the previous game, so as not to give Cohen the extra card draw. But this early in the game. The only reason he did that in the last game was because he had Cohen covered, essentially. He says, I have enough burn in my hand that if you don't kill me on the next turn, I'm going to last long enough to win. On turn 2 of the game, you're just getting in there with that Goblin Guide, aren't you, Marshall?
Absolutely. Turn 1 and turn 2 in this case, is Seth has crunched for 4 already with the guide and is now mapping out the next few turns. You'll see the burn players often play like this, where they'll sort of stare at their hand for a while. Even though the cards do the same thing, they do it in different times at different ways, and there's a lot of consideration. One thing about burn decks like this is that they're very punishing to mistakes. You do not get any wiggle room with these burn decks, and I've seen Seth, definitely take his time throughout the course of the weekend. It's not just bolt you, go. I hope you don't have it. It's very much a measured tactic. He has a nice one here as a follow-up play, though.
Yeah, so Cohen picking
Rebel.
up now plenty more lands, but not a lot of time to deploy them. So he got, one off of his draw from the Serum Visions, one from the Goblin Guide, one from his draw for the turn. Looks like
Serum Visions again for Justin. And he's going to take a couple of damage more off of that Eidolon, which is really going to chip away at his life total. He finds another land.
Yeah, so he's likely digging for a sweeper at this point, like a Pyroclasm, for example.
Fire Spout.
Yeah, just to clear away those 2/2 creatures.
Yeah, those recurring damage from the creatures adds up so quickly, and you still have to deal with the lightning bolts and the lava spikes and stuff from your opponent as well.
So a really tricky start here for Cohen. I mean, he's really bottlenecked on available mana. He can play a bounce land this turn, but, Gemstone Mine dwindling on counters, of course he can return it to his hand to reset the counters, but also kind of just stymies his mana development here. And having to cast another Serum Visions just to dig with the Eidolon in play means taking another 2 damage. So he's just he's bottlenecked, and he just can't really get things out as fast as he really would like to this game.
Right, so Colony Garden is going to come down. That's going to make an 0/1 plant token, which will soak up a couple of damage, but he's actually got to go to his discard step here, and it's the ley line that ends up biting.
Yeah, he wisely notes he doesn't have time to get that onto the battlefield and still protect himself from Seth's creatures. The creatures are the more imminent threat here. He's probably looking for a sweeper or just to get straight up to win the game with Hive Mind before Seth can close it out.
Yeah, that's what he did in game 1. He's looking to put himself in that second seat. We've got Jesse Hampton already advancing.
So let's take a look at Manfield's hand. To no one's surprise, lots of burn spells, but to some surprise, here's Molten Rain, and that's going to be huge here.
So does he just fire that off right now?
I think he does. I mean, we've seen Justin Cohen coming really slow out of the gates. Now, the ideal target for a Molten Rain is a Ravnica bounce land.
Which Justin could have played last turn.
He could have played last turn, yeah. And he may have actually been thinking specifically about Molten Rain. But you know what? I think in his position, he just can't beat a Molten Rain on any land at this point. Or it's unlikely that he can. So it may be one of those cards where he's like, I acknowledge its existence, but I can't really beat it, so I can't really consider playing around it either. But I think we're going to see Seth fire off the Molten Rain here, just setting Cohen back a turn. And what's important here, if he takes out the Colony Garden, now Cohen can't use the Gemstone Mine before returning it to his hand with Ravnica Bounce Land.
Wow.
So we're just going to see Cohen super
Manfield.
bottlenecked on mana and way behind here, and Seth just trying to push this advantage and get through as much damage as he can before Cohen can recover.
Seth looks dialed in here, and he's got to be pretty excited to get to fire off a Molten Rain here with an opponent who has really not done much to this game. Just a couple of Serum Visions have resolved, and that's it. And it looks like he's trying to decide which to hit. No, Manfield's actually considering other options here as well.
Yeah, he doesn't have to Molten Rain here.
All right, he did
but
it.
Yeah, I like that play a lot.
Wow.
He's just seen how slow Justin Cohen has developed so far. We're going to take a peek at Cohen's hand here on your right. So he has Primeval Titan, Summoner's Pact, and Amulet of Vigor. Again, the Amulet can set up for an explosive turn, but
is there anything that get him out of this?
I don't think so. Like, the fact that his Gemstone Mine is on one counter is really crucial here. I think, he was planning to set up a turn where he could deploy a bunch of Ravnica bounce lands into a Primeval Titan, maybe fetching a Radiant Fountain to get some breathing room. But the problem is he can't play the Amulet of Vigor before playing a bounce land now, because then his Gemstone Mine will go to the graveyard, and he doesn't have a land. Well, I guess he can return the bounce land itself to his hand and generate 2 mana, but he doesn't have the Summer Bloom to really continue that going. So,
right.
Summer Bloom would have been a great top deck here, but it doesn't look like he has that either.
So here's Gruul Turf, and like you said, he doesn't get to use his mine
Right,
first.
he really would have loved to tap that Gemstone Mine before returning it to his hand.
And he just has to discard here, and it looks like Seth Manfield's going to be in prime position here to finish off Justin Cohen. He gets to attack for 4, bringing him to 6, and then it's just basically any 2 burn spells to kill Justin, and Seth has them.
Yep.
He's got Lava Spike, Burrow's Charm, Skullcrack, so he's ready to go. And that's going to drop Justin down to 3. Remember, Seth has to take his damage, and there's a Burrow's Charm to finish things off. So Seth Manfield evens things up. We're not done here yet. We're going to get another Game 3 in our second quarterfinal match. Justin Cohen on the back of Hive Mind and a very tricky Simian Spirit Guide.
Yeah, in that first game, that was
1.
definitely the key card. The key card of the second game, I'd say, was Molten Rain. So we saw the sideboard coming into play there. Again, a little bit more interactive. Not that destroying your opponent's lands and preventing them from casting spells is the most interactive Magic, but, at least we're seeing these players, trade off cards 1 for 1, and the sideboard cards becoming relevant here.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's funny. They're interacting on some level, but I would not call this interactive.
Right. At least not by,
Yeah.
modern, or I shouldn't say modern definitions. This is interaction by modern definitions, not by standard definitions, right, Marshall?
That's true.
If you want to put it that way.
So why don't we take a look at some of the spells that are available in this modern format for the burn deck. If you're a red mage at home and you love to fire off a lightning bolt, for example, let's take a look at a few of those. So the old standby, right? One of the most iconic cards in Magic's history, lightning bolt, and it is alive and well in modern. It's still one of the best cards.
Certainly one of the top 5 cards defining modern, I would say.
And it's the best card in the deck, right?
Yeah.
Lightning Bolt just still the best after all these years. And they added a little to it, though, about 10 years after Lightning Bolt came out or so, with Lightning Helix.
Yeah.
Just 1 extra white mana. And you get a Lightning Bolt, but you also get to gain 3 life.
Yeah, and not as efficient as Lightning Bolt, but if you're playing a more defensive deck where you value the life gain, that's great. Or as we saw yesterday in the Burn Mirror matches, really important card.
Yeah. So our next one is the same mana cost as Lightning Helix.
Yeah, another Boros spell.
Yeah, but it does a little bit more damage and kind of eschews the life gain part.
Yeah, this is Boros Charm. In these burn decks, it's primarily the first mode, almost 95% plus of the time that you're using here, just going 4 damage directly to a player.
And that's nice, right? I mean, when you start breaking down the math on the cards, they usually do either 3 or 4, and you don't get that many 4. So
yeah, a lot of times with these burn decks, you're thinking not about damage per mana efficiency. That's part of it, but it's also damage per card efficiency. Mm-hmm. And so most of these burn spells are doing 3 damage per card spent. Boros Charm does 4, and that matters a lot when you're just trying to assemble your quote-unquote combo of 20 points worth of burn spells.
Right, and you'll see that too. This is why cards like Goblin Guide are so good as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
If
Capable
you hit twice,
of doing
if you hit twice
4
with
plus
it,
damage.
it's already done the Boros Charm's worth of damage, and if it's still sitting there, like we saw in that last game, it did 6 damage, and that was it. Yeah, like you said, you basically never use the other 2 options in this deck. It's really all about hammering for 4. So I just talked about Goblin Guide a second ago. Let's take a look at Goblin Guide. It's considered one of the best red creatures really ever at this point.
Yeah, we talked about Lightning Bolt being the strongest card overall in the deck. Goblin Guide probably the strongest card for this particular burn deck. Definitely the card you want to see in your opening hand. Just on the play, this is a disheartening card to face. Like you said, almost always gets in there for 4 or more damage and then still demands an answer afterwards.
Yes. Interesting, too, it creates some kind of cool lines of play. While the burn player doesn't always have a lot of flexibility about how to approach the game. They can decide when and how to deploy, especially their instant speed threats. But you do see sometimes it pops up that the information gained from Goblin Guide, sometimes they flip up a non-land card. And now okay, well, they've got that, and I need to play around that, or I need to make sure that I get this out of my hand first. That kind of stuff creates an extra little subtle layer with Goblin Guide. It's one of the greats for sure.
Yeah, for an exceedingly unsubtle card, it has some subtlety to it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a great way to put that. A more recent addition to these type of decks, and I'm really curious to see going forward how well this card does. It seems to be here to stay, is Eidolon of the Great Revel.
Yeah, this is a super cool card. I was actually on the Journey development team as well, and we talked a lot about this card. It's a callback, of course, to Pyrostatic Pillar from Scourge, which has historically been used by burn decks to combat combo decks, or also just to punish decks with a lot of cheap spells. Modern, of course, every deck has a lot of cheap spells. So we talked a lot about this card, potentially showing up in Modern and shake up the format a little bit, and it has done so.
I like the twist on it too. Still an enchantment, but this one can attack for 2 at the cost of being a bit more fragile.
Yeah, so it does get swept away, by things like Pyroclasm, Fire Spout, or, can be pathed. So it's a little bit more vulnerable, but it can also dish out a lot of damage. Yeah. So it looks like players are just about to begin here. We're looking at Justin Cohen's opening hand here. I see a Summer Bloom there. Potentially a great start. And I think I saw an Amulet of Vigor also, Marshall. So we could be seeing one of these, just premium draws that the Amulet deck is capable of.
If you didn't see one in Amulet before, we have one now. He just drew one off the top.
Okay.
And yeah, I think he didn't have one. I think he just drew Amulet. So now what's the plan for Justin Cohen? He's going to play the Amulet here on turn 2. Play his Simoth Growth Chamber. That's going to get untapped. He's going to get 2 mana out of that. Summer Bloom after he returns it. And there's Summer Bloom, and he could just go off here.
This is the classic draw. So even without any other lands, he can just replay the same Simic Growth Chamber 3 times to generate mana if he wants to. But, we'll see where he's headed with this line. But 3 additional land drops, each of which is worth 2 mana.
And now he's playing Summoner's Pact, grabbing that Primeval Titan. Seth Manfield has done nothing. He's played a land.
So Justin Cohen, he's used one of his extra land drops. Or sorry, he's used one of his extra land drops. In any case, each one that he plays from the Summer Bloom generating 2 mana for a total of 6.
And the Summoner's Pact costing him no mana this turn means that he gets to resolve Primeval Titan at this early stage of the game. It's turn 2, Ian, and he's got a Primeval Titan.
Turn 2 on the play. Wow. And a lot of options from here. So this is where this Amulet deck has a lot of intricate plays that it can go into. So one option is just getting Radiant Fountain, which he can buy back a couple times, gaining some life. Really useful against the burn deck. But I think with the Titan this early, he may go for a more combo-oriented type plan here, where the 2 key lands that Primeval Titan is capable of searching up in this deck are Slayer's Stronghold, which can grant +2/+0 vigilance and haste to a creature, allowing the Primeval Titan to attack in the very same turn, and Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion, another Boros land, which grants double strike to a creature. So between the 2 of those, if you can generate enough mana, you can be attacking with an 8-power, double striking Primeval Titan super quickly in the game.
Now, one thing that Justin also has to keep in mind is he did play Summoner's Pact this turn.
Right. So he's going to have to pay for that. Yeah. So just real quick, one more alternate line that it looks like he's considering here is getting a Ravnica Bounce land, a Simic Growth Chamber, and a Teleria West to return the Teleria West to his hand, which he can then, when he's ready, transmute for a pact of his choice.
And I think that's the line that Justin's decided to take here. Now, as far as Seth Manfield goes, what can he do about a Primeval Titan just as a creature?
Yeah, great question. I mean, just a 6/6 creature by itself is relatively difficult for the burn deck to deal with this early in the game. I mean, he could do something like a double Lightning Bolt or whatever just to take care of it, which I think he would do if he can, and just hope that Cohen doesn't have a lot to follow up with. But yeah, I mean, the Primeval Titan threatens to block whatever Manfield's creatures are. Looks like he does not have a creature-based hand this game.
Lightning Bolt, Shard Volley.
Yeah, I mean, that's super painful to do, setting you back a land and 2 burn spells. pointing at a creature rather than at Cohen, but Primeval Titan is just the key card in this Amulet Bloom deck, and it's just so risky to leave that on the battlefield.
So he did, in fact, transmute Teleria West, and that got him a second copy of Summoner's Pact.
Okay.
And I think that's going to do it for Justin's turn here.
Yeah, not firing off the pact yet, of course, because he still needs to pay for the first one during his next upkeep. But that Summoner's Pact, you can either get him a backup Primeval Titan if he needs another one and thinks he has time to do that, or it can just go for a Thragtusk and gain him a bunch of life. So Seth Manfield really under the gun here. He's got to answer this Primeval Titan, and then Cohen's got more gas in the tank here, either in the form of a Thragtusk or a second Primeval Titan. So
wow, so
we'll
that
see.
Amulet off the top was massive.
Massive, yes, absolutely.
Just huge.
Yep. I mean, he had the Summer Bloom, which is a good start already, but Amulet plus Summer Bloom plus Primeval Titan or Summoner's Pact for Primeval Titan, just the perfect draw for this deck.
Wow. Insane. And now Seth Manfield is left reeling, trying to figure out how to deal with this. He knows that Justin has searched up the second copy of Summoner's Pact, so even if he sets himself back 2 cards and a land to get rid of this Primeval Titan, there could easily just be another one.
Yeah. Now, of note, Manfield has a Molten Rain in his hand, and he's got to be thinking like, man, I wish I could just Molten Rain one of those lands and make him lose to the Summoner's Pact. But unfortunately for him, Justin Cohen was on the play and can do so safely.
Only one of these players is playing Simian Spirit Guide, unfortunately, for Seth.
So beyond that, I mean, he has Destructive Revelry, can answer the Amulet, but I think priority number 1 is dealing with this Primeval Titan in some way. And the only way I see for him to do that, based on our knowledge of his hand, is Lightning Bolt plus Shard Volley, which, again, super painful for him to pull the trigger on.
Does he have a choice? Like, can he?
I
just
don't think
let
so.
that thing
Realistically,
sit?
like the only thing he would do with those burns. A second Lightning Bolt. Okay, so that's better at least than the Shard Volley. But yeah, I mean, he can't just save his burn spell for Cohen's face here, because that Primeval Titan's going to run away with the game. It's going to find Radiant Fountains and bounce lands to rebuy the Radiant Fountain. He has a Summoner's Pact in his hand to find a Thragtusk, and so there's no way that Seth Manfield's game plan can just be directly reducing Justin Cohen's life from 20 to 0 here.
I have to say, with this start from Cohen, this does not look good for Seth. You were saying that can't be his game plan, so his game plan becomes 2 for 1 myself.
Yeah,
with no card draw
like
on my
a
deck.
Control deck that's 2 for 1ing himself with each of Cohen's creatures,
and with no card draw. Most control decks can reload at some point, and his can't. So there's double bolt. To
hopes
take
are
down
slim
Titan.
here, but on the other hand, Cohen's deck is this eclectic mix of all different cards that need to combine in certain ways. So he could just be hoping that, he knows Cohen has the second Summoner's Pact, but he might not have much beyond that. So if he can get through the next wave of whatever it is, whether it's a Primeval Titan or a Thragtusk, and just try to weather the storm, it is possible for Cohen to just draw a whole bunch of useless lands and amulets and nonsense like that, and get, open a window for Seth to get back into the game. But, for the viewers at home, largely we're seeing Justin Cohen running away with this game so far.
Right. There's that Radiant Fountain we talked about. It looks like Justin just drew it naturally here. He's just going to pass the turn back after playing it. Remember, he had to keep his 2 Simic Growth Chambers tapped to pay for that pact on upkeep. So not a lot of action for Justin this turn. He still has that other copy of Summoner's Pact that he could fire off whenever he wants as well.
And even just with the Radiant Fountain there at his leisure, he can continue bouncing that back to his hand and replaying it every other turn, or if he hits another Summer Bloom, potentially multiple times in the same turn, just incrementally gaining life. And, every 2 points of life is kind of worth a draw step for Seth. If you think about taking his deck on average, he's got 20-ish lands, and the rest are burn spells or creatures. Each draw step is worth, 2-ish damage for him, and Radiant Fountain kind of negates that. So
now, Seth does have Molten Rain in hand here.
Okay, that's great for him. Just buys a little bit more time, squeaks out a little bit more damage.
He's also got Destructive Revelry, too.
Yeah, I think we might see him take out that Amulet as a higher priority than firing off the Molten Rain, just because the Amulet is going to generate 2 mana, which is sort of the same as taking out a land right now. And beyond that, the Amulet's even more dangerous in tandem with things like Primeval Titan or Summer Bloom.
Now, if he does want to take out the Amulet, does he need to do it right now? Or can he interrupt any of the flow of Justin Cohen if he waits?
I would just take it out right now. I mean, any mana is super valuable to Justin just starting off his turn. He doesn't really need to wait and get fancy and do it in the midst of a Primeval Titan trigger or something like that.
All right, so he does. He fires it off
He also needs
he
to be
fired off
thinking-
Molten Rain here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So he took out one of the Simic growth chambers, and Seth is going to let Justin Cohen have his Amulet of Vigor for one more turn. This is a more mana-efficient play for Seth as well, as he's played his most expensive spell at
Yeah,
3
that's a
mana.
great point. Mana efficiency definitely factors in here.
And Serum Visions for Justin Cohen, trying to defeat the burn player here, Seth Manfield, to put himself into the semifinals. We're in the quarterfinals here right now in game 3 between these two American players.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think you removed 1 point here instead of here.
So it should be 13 to 20?
Yeah, that's what I have.
Okay.
They're just making sure life totals are correct. I was standing behind Seth for the good part of the weekend, and he gets his handwriting's a little sloppy. It's hard to see exactly where he's at.
So Cohen's hand, he has the second Summoner's Pact that we know about, and a pair of Serum Visions here just to do some digging.
Cohen might be thinking about what if Seth has another copy of Molten Rain here.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to take his time a little bit. There are no creatures on the battlefield, so no recurring source of damage for Seth Manfield. So each turn that goes by is just another draw set for Seth, which again is worth about 2 points of damage-ish. And Justin sitting at a healthy 20 life. I think he can just kind of take his time and play safe, make sure he doesn't lose to something like Molten Rain destroying a land that he's planning to use to pay for a pact.
Right.
And he did just Serum Vision, so he's not going to want to shuffle his library if he left something valuable on top.
Right. All right, so now Seth Destructive Revelries the Amulet. So that'll shut down those shenanigans. Or will it? No, this is a play that Justin Cohen talked about in his sideboard video with Brian David Marshall. He's going to use Nature's Claim on his own Amulet. He says he thinks that this is a fine plan against Seth Manfield's deck because he ends up gaining 4 life as opposed to losing 2.
Yes, so yeah, a 6-point life swing for 1 green mana and a card. Definitely a card you're happy to have in your deck against a burn deck.
That said, Justin Cohen was at 20 when that happened, and now he's at 24. So life total looking pretty good here for Cohen as this game, I mean, Seth is going to have to draw, 4 or 5 more cards just to be able to kill Justin at all. And that's going to give Justin a lot of time to set up much more powerful plays than Seth can deal with. Summer Bloom off the top there for Cohen.
Okay, so a shame he doesn't have the Amulet anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure he agrees with you on that one, Ian.
From Justin's perspective, Seth, of course, breathing a sigh of relief that he was able to answer it.
Maybe just patting himself on the back for being so smart about killing the Amulet.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, he's definitely going to fire that off given the option. And it looked like it didn't really matter too much which order he played his Molten Rain and his Destructive Revelry, the way the game played out. So Cohen here probably just going to continue developing his board. Couple land drops, Serum Visions. He's trying to get a good look at what he's got in his hand. Is that a second copy of Amulet of Vigor that he found?
Looks like it.
Okay. If so, it's somewhat interesting that he decided not to play it to go along with the Summer Bloom there, or maybe he got it off of the Serum Visions afterwards. I'm not sure. But there's a temptation to want to get that Amulet in play, Summer Bloom, play a couple lands, generate some mana, and then Pact for Primeval Titan probably.
For sure.
I think he would rather go for a Primeval Titan here than a Thragtusk, just because the Primeval Titan is guaranteed to generate him long-term value that can transition into him winning the game. Whereas it's possible if he just gets a Thragtusk that Seth can answer it with 2 burn spells, and then Cohen can go on to flood out a little bit from there.
Ooh, there's a Hive Mind on top of his library.
Okay, and he has a Summoner's Pact in his hand, so I think we're going to see the game be decided pretty soon here.
Like next turn pretty soon?
Yeah, next turn. I'm counting 5 mana in play, is that right?
He's got 5 mana in play at the moment. He's going to play the Amulet. So
Yep,
there's
and he has a
Amulet,
Selesnya
2, 4,
Sanctuary.
6.
Yep.
So there it is. That untaps.
Here comes Hive Mind.
Going to return a land to his hand. 2, 4, 5, 6. Hive Mind, packed on the stack. Give that to you. And that's going to do it. Justin Cohen, in his first Pro Tour, this is his debut, is in the semifinals.
Yeah, such an impressive deck. So many interesting lines to navigate there, and he's just been playing it phenomenally well all weekend.
I boarded out the.
I wasn't sure what you were going to board. You had a lot of options.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how good Eidolons were on the draw. Like
They're chancy.
Yeah,
Like they're
I
great
boarded-
on the play and
They're
I
chancy, he
boarded
says.
2 out.
That's reasonable on it. That's very reasonable on this.
So you got a little bit of the post-game chatter there from our players. You know, all the way from F&M all the way up to Pro Tour quarterfinals, you'll still see the same type of chatter.
Yeah.
How should I have brought this in?
I like to
Was
see that
a bad
sportsmanship.
attack?
It's like, hey, we just played a great game. Let's chat a little bit about it, and friendly resolution to that. That's great.
I like it too. All right, for a little bit more friendly chat, we've got Rich Hagan at the news desk.
Thank you so much, Marshall. Thank you so much to Ian Duke there. And Luis, yeah, nature's claim, my own amulet. I'll gain 6 life. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was pretty nourishing for Justin. He went from 20 to 24 off that play, and he would have been at 18, so.
Brian David Marshall off camera was saying, it's not often you see games with a turn 2 Primeval Titan actually go as long as that one did, but you felt that pretty much he was in control throughout game 3.
Justin played more conservatively, getting another Summoner's Pact, for example, right away. And that was because the only way he could lose is if his Primeval Titan does get double bolted, which did end up happening. But Seth wouldn't have any kind of clock that way. Justin had plenty of time, and he did. He had enough time that he didn't even need to draw that Hive Mind that turn. That helped. But had he not drawn it, he still just goes, or Serum Vision into it, he goes Summoner's Pact, Titan, get some more lands, attack you, get some more lands, and would have eventually won.
Yeah, and kind of what we expected. We all said that we thought that Justin Cohen was favoured in that matchup over Burn. Seth took the middle game, but in the end, it is Justin Cohen in his very first Pro Tour who advances to the Final Four. So why don't we take a look at our bracket for you with 2 quarterfinals done and 2 to go. We began the morning with Eric Froelich against Jesse Hampton, and the winner of that one was Hampton. So he advances to the semi-final with his Abzan list, and then you've just seen Justin Cohen advance past Seth Manfield. So that sets up Abzan against the Hive Mind Amulet Bloom Fun and Frolics of Justin Cohen. So now we turn our attention to quarterfinal number 3, and this is the number 2 against the number 7. This is Antonio Del Moral Leon of Spain up against Hong Kong's Li Shi-Chan. So why don't we take a look at Antonio Del Moral Leon of Spain. He is 20 years old, played in 3 Pro Tours, 17 lifetime pro points. This his first Pro Tour top 8. $2,000 is going to ratchet its way up to at least $12,000 at the end. And you see there, both a Magic Online Championship Series competitor in 2014 and also part of the Spanish team at the World Magic Cup. So let's get into his deck now. And Luis, he is playing a blue-red Splinter Twin list. What's this deck about?
All it's trying to do is assemble Deceiver, Exarch, or Pestermite with the card Splinter Twin. You get infinite fairies, or infinity fairies, as Nate Holt would say, and you win the game on the spot. It also can play as a tempo control deck because it's got, Cryptic Command, Remand, Lightning Bolt, Flame Slash, and Snapcaster Mage. It's very capable of winning games with just Snapcaster, Vendilion, and Pestermite.
One of the most famous exponents of twin decks in Modern is Patrick Dickmann of Germany. And certainly something we've seen from watching him play is that in a lot of his decks, the twin combo isn't really the thrust of the deck. It's almost this sword of Damocles held over the opponent that I can do this, but I'm actually planning on not bothering and beating you in various other ways, if it's Tarmo Twin, the Tarmogoyf beatdown, and so on. Is this deck a more, what I might call old-fashioned Splinter Twin list, where the goal really is it my turn at the end of your turn 3? Oh, and now here's a Deceiver X, I'll untap, kill you.
It's not the full-on combo because it doesn't have Kiki Jiki in it, but it is pretty combo-rific. I mean, it's got the 4 twins and the 6 ways, or 6 creatures to put them on. But again, the threat of the combo is a really big part of how this deck plays. If it ever has 3 lands untapped, it can go end of turn Deceiver, untap Twin. Your opponent has to respect that, and that gives you time to Vendilion click them, and then bolt them, and then Snapcaster them. So this isn't the full combo deck, but it doesn't have anything like Tarmogoyf in it either, so it's kind of in the middle on the spectrum.
Okay, so he is playing blue-red at Splinter Twin. He is up against Li Shi-Chan with Burn. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Why don't we head across town to Marshall Sutcliffe, who is waiting with one of the great Sunday specialists, one of the great analysts of Pro Tour Top 8s down the years, winner of Pro Tour Tokyo 2001, Svi Moshowitz.
Thank you, Rich. So I've got Svi here. We wanted to get your thoughts on this, Svi. So something that people at home don't always know is that when you make the top 8 of the tournament and you're testing with a big team, often you'll go to dinner and go to bed, even though you'd be thinking, well, I better be testing for my matchup. Your team often does it for you.
You need to learn exactly how to play the matchup, but what you need just as much is a good night's sleep, a nice dinner, to relax. Like Jelger was jet lagged last night. He didn't get in from Europe that early. We built the deck, we played a few games, we went to bed, we woke up, we played in the morning. Because that's so important. When I won Tokyo, I went to bed. Normally, I test all night. That time, I woke up in the morning, the English said, you take out Fact or Fiction. I said, we've never done that in one game of testing, but the more I think about it, you're right, I did it, it worked.
So what is the process like? Will you grab another teammate and just start jamming games against the deck that your teammate's going to play against?
The first thing you have to do is actually get the cards, because you don't have the deck built. Often it's something you didn't see before the tournament. So you have to go through the deck. I used Vidiguris' cards this time, and we pull it together, and then you shuffle up, you play a few game ones, you get a feel for it. Now one guy's always on the play, the other guy's always on the draw, because that's the way it works now. And then you figure out how you're going to board. And the biggest puzzle is figuring out how is your opponent actually going to sideboard, what does he think you're sideboarding? And once you know that, then you can start testing the real questions, and then the questions of how exactly do you play, what is everything representing, because when you don't know what your opponent's deck list is, you have a lot of uncertainty about what cards might be in his deck, might be in his sideboard. When you know exactly what he might be representing, then everything changes.
Sure. Now, what did you learn about this matchup?
So this matchup is one that we've tested before. It's very straightforward. There are no surprises from the burn side, because the burn deck is lots and lots of cards that do the exact same thing, plus Eidolon, basically. I have some cheap creatures, Goblin Guide, Monastery Swift Spear to come out and turn 1 and attack you. I have Eidolon, which is wonderful. I have a few Grim Lavamancer's, which is the most unique card in the deck, because it can actually gain you advantage, get your repeated advantage. But mostly the deck is aim at your head, aim at your head, aim at your head, 3 at a time, sometimes 4. Those are the best cards. Hope you die. And a lot of them have to go to their head or require sacrifices. So you don't really have a long game beyond simply, if my long game is I draw more cards and you were at 6 and now you're dead.
Right.
Right. So the twin deck is trying to survive that onslaught without taking continuous damage, making sure their counters can trade off with pretty much anything and get to the later point in the game. If they start, so it's very hard to kill Deceiver Exarch, because even though there are 14 cards that can do 3 damage, you can't deal 4. So you have to use 2 cards, and they both require mana. A lot of the cards require 2 mana, and it's very hard to hold up 3 mana and still progress. And even if you do, you're going to have to do it immediately, because you're going to try to tap one of your lands. And so you're going to have to make a choice. And so Pastor Might just dies. Pastor Might dies very easily, very often, but soaks up a card. Whereas Deceiver Exarch can just win the game, because you can untap and twin. So the key question is, if you don't have, how do you get to a point where you can actually play around him having the combo in his hand? And the answer is you usually can't. You usually have to just go for it on that condition. You can usually hold up Pastor Might defense, because that's pretty easy, because you can't really have time to protect against the Pastor Might without dying very often, unless you manage to trade off a bunch of cards. Twin has very good interaction early on. You've got Spell Snare on turn 1, you've got Lightning Bolt on turn 1, you've got Snapcaster Mage, which can even be fired off on turn 2 just to trade off with anything, and it can just be blinked in, and then off it, even if it eats up a burn spell, that's fine. And then you've got Electrolyze, which can kill a lot of the creatures, and Cryptic Command is obviously good if you get to that point, can even bounce a land to set that things up.
Sure. What do you make of the matchup overall?
I'd rather be the twin player,
okay,
but it's one of these things where I'd rather be on the play.
Okay.
And I mean, twin doesn't do a lot of damage to itself, which is also very nice. A lot of decks start at 15 or 13. This deck starts at 18.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you'd rather be the twin player. That says a lot. So thanks for taking the time. We'll
Absolutely.
send it back to Richard Hagan at the news desk.
Thanks so much, Marshall. Thanks so much to Svi Moshowitz there. So why don't we take a look at Li Shi-chan of Hong Kong. Let's take a look at his career resume. And my goodness me, what a resume it is. He's from Team MTG Mint Card. And let me tell you, they are far and away the most successful team at this Pro Tour by a margin. They not only put Li Shichan here into the top 8, they had multiple players in the top 16, multiple players in the top 50 as well. Lots of cash. They worked out they had more than 10% of the prize pool guaranteed by the end of the weekend. Fantastic effort by the Asia Pacific All-Stars, headlined this weekend by Li Shichan. Platinum Pro, over 200 lifetime pro points by the end of today, and that $64,000, well, he could be into 6 figures by the time this day is done. It's his 4th Pro Tour top 8, but that's not just spread across years. Incredible record in Modern. He didn't play in the first Modern Pro Tour in Philadelphia in 2011, but in the 3 since, he has made the top 8 every single time. A phenomenal performance by Li Shichan. So, why don't we take a look at his deck list? It is Burn, as we know, and we've been joined by Ian Duke here. So, Ian, talk us through Lee's Burn list.
Yeah, a lot of this is the typical cards that we expect to see in most burn lists. Eidolon of the Great Revel, the typical burn package of Boros Charm, Lava Spike, Lightning Bolt. Some key differences here. Looks like he's skimped a little bit on Searing Blazes and Skull Cracks as compared to, say, Seth Manfield's list, with additional Lightning Helixes here. So that indicates that in the Swiss, he was kind of expecting to play more burn mirror matches here. For the most part, these cards are fairly interchangeable in the particular matchup we're about to see.
All right, that is the burn list there of Li Shichan. We heard Zvi say that he would rather be in the twin seat. Do you agree with that, Luis?
I do. I think that Deceiver Exarch is enough of a headache that I would rather be the one casting that one.
All right, how about you, Ian?
Yeah, I also agree. I mean, the Splinter Twin deck is capable of winning very quickly. Deceiver Exarch takes 2 burn spells usually to answer, so yeah, I think it can defend itself and win quickly.
All right, so looks like we are just about set to go. Here it is going to be Li Shichan of Hong Kong, and it is going to be an interesting one with Antonio Del Moral Leon. Can he get the job done with Blue-Red Splinter Twin? Let's find out as we head down. So, Li Shichan. Do you know, I think I'm actually going to go with Li Shichan here with Burn, but we'll see what happens as we head down for the 3rd quarterfinal of Pro Tour Fate Reforged.